Trick or treat. Right after Halloween, November 1st, 2021, YouTube will require two-step verification to two-factor verification to access YouTube Studio. This is originally back in August 24th of 2021, was only supposed to be if you monetized your account and you were a YouTube partner. But remember also that YouTube and Google have the legal option to declare that your channel is by default and retroactively monetized so that they can piss and moan about you saying the word fuck too many times. So they can apply this to anybody. And you came here because YouTube Studio told you you're going to lose access to YouTube Studio if you don't use two-factor authentication, even though they can detect whether or not it really applies to you easily, because they desperately want you to use two-step verification. And they'll tell you it's because of your security, even though it's so that they can use it for market research, send you spam, or just make it to where you have to go out and buy a smartphone. I wonder if the smartphone salespeople are grinning and giggling and wringing their hands maniacally. Go to myaccountgoogle.com. Sign in options. Two-step verification. Use backup codes instead of using any of the other options. Click Get New Codes. This generates 10 8-digit long codes. You download it as backup-codes-channel name or login name or your email address .txt. Any old set of codes you had becomes inactive immediately, so don't do it unless you're running out. Or do it just as you're about to run out, when it's a convenient day of the week. When you use one of these codes, it becomes inactive. You sign into any Google service, let's say your Gmail. You type in your login and password. Now, at that point, it's also authenticating the MAC address, which is an ID code that comes with your network card or your Wi-Fi card. I'm using a wired card. And by the way, some of them you can change manually, so it's really not a useful method. And it'll also use your IP address, which may or may not be consistent or static. It's not usually, but it could be. So that if you go to a coffee shop, you get nagged more often. But it might use the MAC address, which is, in fact, something that can be stable. Anyhow, after you've typed in a username and password with your MAC address and IP address maybe even being stable, and even if you're holding a fucking wired phone or a cell phone that you use from the beginning to authenticate your account, which should be good enough, you'll be asked for a verification code at random because they feel like being bitchy. I've avoided this like the plague and been able to. It will want access to a phone number. And instead of using your stable phone number, I ran into them, and a lot of you have, it demanding a brand new phone number to verify your account. You can't use the one you used to verify the account originally, because that would imply that you're a person who has a phone number and a SMS number. They wanted to go through Google Prompt, Google Authenticator, SMS, or you can do the 8-digit code that we just generated. They generated at their end. Now, you might think, if you're really, really thinking ahead, that that code set would include cross-reference. Like, let's say it was 26 of them, and they were labeled A through Z and had the 8-digit codes. And they could say, give me code A, which would make it really hard for someone to duplicate the information somehow. So you could grab code A and give it to them. You could even reuse it. But no, after you use the code, it's invalidated, so you have to cross it off the list, and you get 10 of these. The other method with the alphabet and then the codes has been used on other systems. You locate your backup codes. You enter the backup code. It doesn't specify which one. You can probably use any of them. After you use the backup code to sign in, that one code becomes inactive. And again, if you make 10 new codes, they all become inactive. And after you use the 10th code to log in, you should immediately say, give me new codes. Hopefully it won't demand another authentication code, which would be dumb because then it would be really just 9 codes are valid, effectively. My most popular video on any of my channels at one point was a video where I bitched about Amazon and other services, specifically Amazon that day, making it to where when they demanded two-step verification, when it wasn't required before, and it used to be optional, no longer is, it wouldn't let me use an email address for the code until I typed in a code that I received as an SMS on a smartphone they wanted me to buy, obviously. So I used someone else's. And then I told it, you will do nothing but send me an email. Now when I go to Amazon or eBay or whatever that requires this, I open my email account and I wait for him to bitch and I say, send me a code to my email account. And then I bitched about the fact that it would change it back to requiring a cell phone every once in a while. Because again, the whole point of it wasn't security. The whole point was to keep you from avoiding using a cell phone. Because it wants to know where you're standing, how much money you've spent, what your passwords are, who knows what else. Wants to take a picture of you when you're naked. I don't know, and I don't care. But waptek, you sound paranoid. I'm being an asshole for a reason. When I looked up how to get around this, all I found were people simping and saying, go out and buy a real cell phone and join the modern generation. No, I'm going to use the 8-digit codes. I'm going to get 10 of them when I have to do this. Not until then. I'll do the experiment on the least used channel because, yeah, if you try to use a security option and a company or corporation like Google that is evil, that lies, that sets traps like your channel can be monetized to force you to do this. Yes, they've done that before. They're going to avoid like the plague you using something that isn't the real purpose. Our test for the day, if you choose to accept it, is to go ahead on your Google account and tell it, for YouTube Studio, for great justice, I'm going to demand that they send me 10 8-digit codes that I can print out on a sheet of paper and then immediately erase from my computer. And if you want to be extra secure, you can scramble up the text file with random shit, like Laura Epsom shit, and then print it out and keep the print out there in case it asks for it, and then you have a bunch of codes. Not kidding. I'm, of course, just going to leave it on a text file because I don't fucking care. Now, remember, this is timed right after Halloween, trick or fucking treat. It's a November 1st cutoff point, and two-factor verification, according to the error message, is going to be used everybody when it's only supposed to be channels that are monetized. And again, they can use the excuse of, oops, I monetized you. Now you have to do it. What's the point of this? Security. No. Two-step authentication has been broken on Apple and PC and using Google and using Android equipment and using smartphones from Apple, their iPhones. This has been broken repeatedly. You can look up story after story after story of two-step verification not working. Simply letting us use really secure passwords is defeated by what Wells Fargo won't let me use a high security password. Same thing with Yahoo. And the actual reason both of them have whistleblowers have said so is so they have plausible deniability when they get broken into, and they'll just claim it was one of you having a low quality password that they forced you to use. I'm not shitting you. That's literally the reason. With Google, they let you use good secure passwords. So there's no need for this shit. They can. You could at one point, this was a long time ago, if you had a Google account that was a master account or business account, I want you to use the IP address, the MAC address of the hardware I have, all of it that you can see, and I hook up with all of it, and all of it is allowed for IP address float because I go for coffee shops. They let you set up a security profile. I told it I go to coffee shops because I did. Even when I ran a business, I went to coffee shops to do Wi-Fi because I'm an asshole. You can say that. And I also said the authentication codes. Let's use authentication codes. And at one time, you had honest to goodness, you could spit out up to 100 authentication codes for a business. And they could all use the same login because you could do Google business accounts. And I had one. I really did. So I told it, yeah, give me exactly 26 of them. Well, what are your employee names or ID codes? A through Z. I'm not kidding. I literally did that. So I could log in. It would just be the same password to log in. And if they only saw one person logging in instead of all 26 employees, they'd say, hey, we got the IP and MAC address. It's the same guy. We want the password that belongs to employee D. Okay, here's D's password, the authentication code. Okay. That's where I got the idea from. It was one of their shit. That was back when you could set up 100 accounts at once. YouTube accounts and everything. Just randomly string them. They would just give you a 2-digit code and you could change the names for them. That's something that someone used at one time to impersonate me hundreds and hundreds of times. They had systems in place to do this kind of security a long time ago. And then they took it away, not because someone was abusing it, but because It didn't involve them doing market research. This is not about your security or safety. And no, it's not just for channels that are actually monetized so that you have a good reason to make your passwords and logins much harder to crack. Because they're not when you do two-step. Especially if it's through your fucking cell phone that can be stolen. And also because they want you to use a cell phone every time that's a burner phone and new and different. Oh, you've used this number too much to authenticate your account. I thought that was the fucking point of using a static phone number that's 20 feet away from me that's wired to the fucking wall. And then the comments, when you look in support or questions and answers or whatever for Google. Oh, welcome to Google Answers, where we have a bunch of simps placating the corporation because they're terrified to say the emperor has no clothes and no balls. Everybody in the discussion forums today are trying to justify this being okay, including them using the wrong tone and wording, saying, we're threatening to shut down your account if you don't give us your phone number. So here's your option for the day. 10 8-digit codes to send a message to them, to shove it down their throat. Or you do exactly what they want, which is what this is based on. Okay, I'm going to give you an honest opinion. What is more secure? My cell phone, if I had one, could be stolen. They bitch if I use the same number, which defeats the purpose of having a static number. They want to do SMSs, which any idiot can hack and redirect. At one time, you could do it through web pages. They kept you from doing that, even though it was more convenient, honestly. Google Authenticator and Google Prompt. 8-digit backup codes you print 10 at a time on a sheet of paper that are almost impossible to hack from Japan. Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting you do. And you know what? I didn't know they still had anything like this because it's never mentioned because they don't want you to use it. If Google does not want you to use an option that is inarguably more secure, you should do it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. If my channels don't work after Halloween, it's because they've done this to me to fuck me over. And by the way, this is how they killed off my first account, where all I was doing was making cat video playlists. That's one of the reasons I became so militant about not being nice to a horrible corporation.